What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you my review of Hunter x Hunter episode 115 entitled Duty in Question. It has begun! I'm back. Maybe not full time, but just for right now, I'm back. And you know how it goes, ladies and gentlemen. I got textbooks, I got body bags. Well, this here ain't a body bag, it's a garbage bag, but you know how it goes. Haters don't get real body bags, so they gotta get the garbage bags. Like I said, first of all, it feels good to be back. I don't know if I'm gonna be doing this on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis, but whatever. I'm back for right now to give you this episode review. And I'll give you the full details on what's going to happen later on in a update video. But for right now, let's get into this Hunter x Hunter episode review. First impressions. I haven't... The last time I even watched or read Hunter x Hunter was back when I did the last episode review, which was somewhere back in April of 2013. So my first impression of watching this week's episode was confusion because I hadn't read the manga in more than a year, almost a year. Hadn't watched the episode review in, about 10 months, something like that. So I had forgotten everything, so I was confused. So I had to go back and watch like the last 7 or 8 episodes before this week's episode, so I could catch myself up, so I won't be sitting here acting like a fool, not remembering anybody's names or abilities or what the hell is going on in the story. So, besides my first impressions, the music. I gotta just talk about the music first before I even get into the summary and analysis. The music. What is up with these opening and ending themes? They're just not making any sense whatsoever. The music, and I'm not even saying the music is bad. The music is not bad and it's not good. It's like, okay, I'm not really a big fan of opening and ending things in general. But the major problem I have with the music is that it's out of sync. It doesn't seem to fit this story arc. Why is it so upbeat? Why is it so adventurous? I mean, this arc right now, the Chimera Ant arc, is essentially about an interspecies conflict for domination of the entire planet. It's literally you either going to get killed by the Chimera Ants or be their slaves, or the humans are going to have to kill off pretty much all the Chimera Ants. So why is the opening music and even the ending music so upbeat and adventurous? Like, we're not dealing with subjects that have to do with slavery, torture, and genocide. The music just strikes me the wrong way. But you know what's so odd about this is that the opening and ending themes are out of place. But the music inside the episode is absolutely beast. It completely fits the atmosphere. You have tracks with deep and heavy bass that convey a brooding atmosphere, that conveys the tension of the situation. So you have music like, what's that soundtrack? Legend of the Martial Artist? That shit is beast. That's my new favorite soundtrack from Hunter x Hunter. That soundtrack is beast. And Obvious Difference of Power. Very good soundtracks that sound great inside the episode, but the opening and ending themes just are completely out of place. Doesn't make sense at all. So now let me get into my summary and analysis. This episode was very slow paced. I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, I'm not going to say I disliked the episode, but I would have liked for things to pick up, because Netero and Miriam are about to fight. Gon and Pido are about to throw some blows up in here. That's what we want to get to, man. We don't want these slow-paced episodes where people have to set up all the pieces. That's not what I want. I want to get right down to the action. And I'm really not sure what's wrong, why the pace of this episode was so slow. It can't be because the anime is not trying to outpace the manga. I mean, Togashi Yoshihiro hasn't written a chapter in like, what, at least more than a year. I think the last thing Togashi Yoshihiro wrote was that Karapaka sort of one shot. I think that was the last thing he wrote. And I'm thinking that perhaps it's the narrative exposition. Because one thing you'll notice in, at least in this arc in particular, Togashi Yoshihiro employs a very interesting narrative technique. He actually has a narrator. Most manga don't have narrators. So I think part of the problem is that the episode has to slow down to include all of that narrative exposition that's in the manga. That's just my take on it. But in any event, it kind of messes with the pacing of the episode, which I don't really like too much. And as a result, only 4 things happen in this episode. 1, Welfin and Buravado? Blaster? Whatever, the lobster dude. That guy. They become suspicious of Ikago impersonating Flutter. Yuppie and Knuckle prepare to fight. Melaoron had a run-in with Welfin. And Gon and Killua finally get to Pito. I don't know why it took them 20 minutes to jump over from one side of the building to the other side of the building, but apparently it did, and that was pretty much it. So, one thing I do want to talk about in this episode, though, is Welfin's internal monologue, not dialogue, monologue, because I found that to be quite interesting, and I think this was really good, because it gives you some insight into a very abrupt character transformation that happens to Welfin basically within the span of about 20 minutes. This entire episode. So first we start off with Welfin is suspicious of Flutter, who he doesn't really know. I mean, he's suspicious of Flutter, who he doesn't really know is being impersonated by Ikago. Second, he even becomes suspicious of Blaster, because at one point in the episode he's like, well, maybe Blaster's in cahoots with Flutter, and maybe he's about to ambush me. And the third thing that happens inside of his internal monologue is he says, well, if Blaster's at the bottom of the building waiting for me to get off the elevator so he can ambush me, I better not get on this elevator. I better do something else. So then he finds a way to accuse Flutter of planting a bomb. So he wants to go find Bizef and then accuse Flutter of planting the bomb. And then he figures, well, this will help me gain an advantage to become king of the underground, because then Bizef will be indebted to me even more. And finally, when he has his whole run-in with Melaoron, his skepticism just becomes deeper and deeper and deeper, to the point where he starts to even question his alliance with the Chimera Ants. And I think this is a sort of very important point that's being made through the character of Welfin, because it reminds me of something called game theory. And game theory is basically the mathematical study of the decisions that people make within the context of conflict and cooperation. And one way that's very easy to see this is in the game of chess. That's a very good example. Because in chess, you don't just have to think about the moves that you're going to make. You have to think about how your opponent is going to respond to your moves, and then it just keeps going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So that's essentially what game theory is, and that's what Welfin is caught in the midst of at this point. He's become so skeptical of everybody that he even starts to question people who are really allied with him, and he starts to question the people that he's allied with. So I thought that was very interesting, because that aspect of game theory actually leads to an even deeper sort of a deeper aspect of this whole situation, which is that it gives you some insight at a specific individual level, which is Welfin, into how similar the Chimera Ants are to humans. Just like humans, the Chimera Ants are obviously about domination, self-preservation, hierarchy, political scheming, statecraft, and what's most disturbing about this situation, and the bigger point or issue that this whole skepticism of Welfin illuminates, is that the creepy thing is not how brutal the Chimera ants are. It's how similar they are to us. And that was rather surprising, because I hadn't really thought about that issue before I actually watched this episode. Because think about humans. What was the first thing we did when after we got out of hunter-gatherer bands and we started creating society and civilizations? We started trying to find ways to become masters of nature, to dominate nature, and to pretty much dominate every species on this planet. Because if you do some sort of research into the environmental impact that humans have, there have literally been hundreds or even thousands of species that have gone extinct simply because of how humans have just completely monopolized the entire planet. And I thought that was a very interesting point of similarity between the Chimera ants as displayed through Welfin, and human beings, which is, like I said, kind of creepy and disturbing. Also, gotta talk about Shoot. Shoot is absolutely fucked up at this point. Like, his leg was already basically destroyed from Jump Street. His leg was destroyed. He was trying to fight against Youpi, who you've never really had a chance against. And at this point, he's just on the floor like, I can't give up. I have to continue fighting. I have to try and stop Youpi. And he is crawling, dragging around his useless leg that's trailing blood stains on the floor. And I thought that was just great imagery and a sort of great metaphor for how not just Shoot in this particular situation, but humanity as a whole is about to get fucked up if we don't find a way, or if they, not us, because there's no Chimera Antarchs in real life, but how humanity inside Hunter x Hunter is going to be shit out of luck if they don't find a way to kill Mary and the three royal guards. Also, got to talk about Gon and Killua quickly. So Killua and Gon finally make it over to the other side of the palace to where Pitou is. And they see Pitou is healing Komugi. No, not Komugi. Komugi. That's her name. Komugi. And the look on Gon's face when he saw Pitou, he had that "you about to get your ass beat" face. When I saw that face, I mean, it just, like I said, I haven't read the manga or watched the anime in so long, and seeing that look on Gon's face when he saw Pitou just brought back all the memories I had of how intense this upcoming fight is gonna be. This shit is about to get serious. No doubt about that. This is absolutely about to get serious. And also, gotta talk about Zeno Zoldyck, Killua's grandfather, because this was also a very interesting point in the episode. So before Gon and Killua walk into the guest room, to Komugi's guest room, where Pitou is currently healing Komugi, they run into Zeno, and Zeno says something very interesting. He says, I actually wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. He says, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what's happening inside. And my first thought was, on one hand, I kind of understand what he's talking about, but on the other hand, what exactly is he talking about? And then I realized that there's actually two meanings to that statement of I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what's happening on the inside. The first is I'll let you draw your own conclusions about why Pitou is healing some basically cannon fodder human that nobody is expecting. So I'll let you draw your own conclusions about that. And the other sort of second meaning of what he said is, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what's happening on the inside of Merian, and perhaps even the Chimera Ant arcs, to not Chimera Ant arcs, Chimera Ants. Why do I keep saying Chimera Ant arcs? The Chimera Ants, and Merian in particular, because he's been, I mean, Komugi has been sent his character transformation in a whole different arc than it would have otherwise went, and to the point where he's just somewhat schizophrenic. With this, there's this huge dichotomy in his character where, on one hand, he's talking about how he can crush all the humans and that's the real source of power, but on the other hand, he cares so much for Komugi, even to the point where when Zeno and Netero even got to the room, they were so stunned by the fact that Merian was showing such care and concern for Komugi that they were even caught off guard. And if you remember, at one point, Zeno even says to Netero, like, this is not what I was led to believe about Merian and the Chimera Ants. And even Netero was thinking to himself, me neither. So there's sort of a double meaning in what Zeno was saying. On one hand, he's saying, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about Pido inside that room. And on the other hand, he's saying, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about the transformation that's apparently happening with Merian right now. Because Merian's transformation, character transformation, is going to have huge implications for the story going forward. So overall, like I said, I thought this episode was very slow. Obviously not happy about that. But overall, I think it was a sort of good lead into hopefully what will be an action-packed next episode. So hopefully everything speeds up in the next episode. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.